Alright, so in the Legion Alpha, it looks like Blizzard is actually attempting to balance PvP pet battles, which is not something they ever actually do. So this is actually a very rare occurrence. This is great, actually, and a lot of the changes are pretty cool. So I'm going to go over them real quick. First one, the biggest one, the Undead Racial. During its invulnerability round, the active undead pet will now do minus 25% damage. This is a nice nerf. I still don't think it's enough of a nerf, but it's still a really good one. Because the reason undead pets are so good is because they have the 2 turns of immunity, which essentially gives them 2 free turns to attack. With this one, though, it kind of like cuts that in half. Because usually, you know, they have that free turn to attack when they get killed, plus the turn after. If they're going to be doing 25% less damage while they have the immunity buff active, that means that the turn they get killed, like if they went second that turn and died, they'll do 25% less damage that turn, plus the turn after, which adds up to about 50% less damage. Which I think is a pretty nice nerf. That's probably a good way to balance it out. I still don't think it's enough, because, I mean, if you just use a static effect instead, you know, like the Frostwolf Ghost Pup, if he just uses his heal on the backline pets, that's a good use of your turn. Or the Unborn Valk, if he uses Unholy Ascension, that's a good use of your undead turn. So it's not like the best, but it is still it's a step in the right direction. A really good step, too. Unless it doesn't work the way I think it does, where it's just only you do 25% less damage during your turn of immunity, like the turn after, where you only do 25% less damage for that 1 attack instead of the 2, like I said in my previous scenario. I'm pretty sure it's going to work the way where if you went second, it's going to punish you for dying that turn by doing 25% less damage, which is a nice little nerf. It's still strongest racial in the game, but not by a huge margin anymore. The mechanical one is actually kind of competitive for it. I think this is all speculation based on nothing, and just based on my own personal feeling from doing hundreds of PvP pet battles. Next one, Frog Kiss plus Sleeping Gas. Now has a 1 round cooldown. Frog Kiss and Sleeping Gas wasn't really a big problem. The best pets that use both of those abilities were only tier 2 at best, but it is really annoying to play against, and I think this is kind of like an over nerf to it. Basically, if you get lucky with Frog Kiss and Sleeping Gas, you can permanently stun your opponent, because the polymorph it doesn't break on damage, and the sleep does break on damage. Actually, that's kind of a different one. I think you can reactivate it, though, as soon as it breaks without resilience kicking in, though, so you could permanently sleep someone as well, if you get really lucky. I know I've gotten a couple of Frog Kisses that go off back to back, and if they put a 1 round cooldown on it, you can't do that anymore. Which is great, but the thing is, these abilities are both ramp-up abilities, where they do crap for damage at first, and then they ramp up and do more damage later on. And if they have a 1 round cooldown, it's going to be a really shitty ramp-up ability, so if they add the cooldown to it, they have to change the fundamental damage of it, otherwise it's just going to be a terrible ability. So, I mean, they didn't say anything about increasing the damage on it, so I guess you're just not going to be using Sleeping Gas or Frog Kiss anymore, since it's not really worth it. Okay. Let's see. Thunderbolt, Avalanche, Grave Destruction, Carpnado, Arcane Storm, and Psionic Storm. Base damage reduced by approximately 15%. Thunderbolt will now have a 5 round cooldown instead of a 4 round cooldown. This is like a double nerf to Mechanical Pandaren and Dragon Lanes, which is just great. I hate going against them. You see them like every other pet battle. People think Graves is the big problem. He is. He's definitely a big problem, but MPD is just as bad, and this is nice. A nice double nerf to him. There are some abilities that were able to avoid the nerf. This didn't hit all of the shared damage. No, what is it? Shared, evenly split damaged AoE abilities, like Whirlwind was untouched, and Dreadful Breath, yeah. Dreadful Breath used to be a big deal until Graze was introduced, and everyone stopped playing it because Graze is a lot faster. This nerf doesn't touch Dreadful Breath, though, which means you'll probably see more of those teams again, because Dreadful Breath is a really good team. Really good AoE team. And it also left Whirlwind alone, but then again, Whirlwind wasn't really as good as these ones. It only had a 3-turn cooldown, it did less damage anyway. I just really love this double nerf to MPDs. Fuck those guys. Alright, and Cleave added 1 round cooldown. This completely kills Weebominations. The thing is, Weebominations, they're a huge pain in the ass, but I never actually considered them tier 1. Probably like the best tier 2 pet in the game, or one of the crappiest tier 1 pets. Like, he's a good pet, but I just thought all the other tier 1 pets were better, so I never actually included them onto my list. Good thing I never did, because I would totally have to take him off if I did, thanks to this 1-turn cooldown, because that completely kills the Weebomination. He's the only pet in the game that can use Cleave, and it has a 1-round cooldown now. What they should have done was just lower its damage, because it hit as hard, or even harder than a basic attack, and just split the damage. If they lowered the damage to so he worked like Petal Feet, who has an ability very similar, but it always splits the damage and never... No, it always hits 3 targets, so if there's only 1 target alive, it hits for like nothing, where Cleave doesn't have that restriction because it's an even split. If they just lowered Cleave's damage to be more in line with, like, you know, Petal Feet's Cleave, it'd probably be a lot better too, but I mean, giving a 1-round cooldown just completely kills him because he doesn't have another basic attack to use. So he'd basically be using Cleave, and then he'd alternate between one of his other 2 abilities that all have cooldowns. So he wouldn't be able to spam Cleave anymore, and he wouldn't be useful either. I mean, I guess there is another pet that has an ability like that called Eula, Brood of Yulin. He's one of the celestial pets you get. He has an ability called Jade Crackling Lightning, which works kind of like how they're fixing Cleave, except it's always an even split, just like Petal Feet's even split. You know, Petal Feet's even split works just like Bone Storm. That's a good one too, because you guys probably don't know what I'm talking about. Bone Storm always hits all 3 targets. Jade Crackling Lightning always hits 3 targets. It has a 1-round cooldown, and it's basically, you know, just the toned down version of, what you might call it, Bone Storm. And Cleave is basically going to be like that, except it's going to be an undead pet with a lot of health and 2 other good abilities. So he still might be used. He's just not going to be as good as he was before. But he wasn't really that great to begin with, to be honest. Like, he was a really good pet, but... anyways, let's go on to the next one. This is the one I'm most excited about. Graves. Oh, look at all these nerfs to Graves. Clobber and Bone Storm have swapped slots. Yeah, no shit. You should have done that from the beginning. I don't know. Blizzard. You guys just really wanted people to play Heroes of the Storm, didn't you? I love the game to death. I play Heroes of the Storm all the time. But, this pet is just... such cancerous on the thing. It's not like the pet itself is like ridiculously good. I mean, it is, but there are other pets that I think are better than Graves. But it's just everyone and their mom uses Graves, and that's the big thing. It's like you basically have to build your team around the notion that your opponent's going to have Graves on their team, because there's a very high chance you'll go against a Graves because everybody uses it. That's why I hated him, because he's a huge pain in the ass, and basically I have to build all my teams with the notion that they'll be getting hit in the back row, which just completely kills all creativity with teams because AoE was just too strong. They're toning down AoE a lot. They nerfed the damage by 15%, and they're switching out Bone Storm and Grave Destruction, so now Graves is no longer the only pet in the game with 2 cooldown-based AoEs on 2 separate slots. Now he has to choose between Bone Storm or Grave Destruction. That's actually kind of a tough choice. They're both really good. I think Bone Storm does more damage to 3 pets alive, but Grave Destruction is an even split, so it does a bunch of single target damage. Then again, Bone Storm also does 10% of your health as damage after the end of the turn, so it does have a kickback to it. Anyways, let's go into the other nerfs. Graves' base stats have changed at level 25. Graves' speed will now be 244. Power will be now 297, and his health will be lowered to 1587. This is another great thing. You see, in addition to Graves having the only 2 cooldown based AoEs in the game, He also had really high attack power and health, which meant he could survive long enough to use those 2 AoEs twice if he didn't just nuke him down super quickly. Plus, you know, he had the undead racial, and since they're nerfing the undead racial, Graves essentially got triple nerfed, which is great. This should show you just how broken he was. If Blizzard's like, we should probably triple nerf Graves. So yeah, this is great. They lowered his damage. He still has pretty high attack power, but it's not over 300 anymore, and his health is still decently high. It's just, you know, it's 100 lower, which does kind of make a big deal. So I love, they finally fixed his stats. His stats were ridiculous for the moveset he had. That's why he was so good. Everything about him was just great. He had the best racial in the game. He had really good stats for the ability set he had. He was just like the perfect combination of just great stuff. And they're nerfing all of it, and that's pretty much it. They also nerfed the undead racial, which I'm really loving too. Oh my god, this is great. This is so good. I can't tell you how many teams I've lost to just because they had a better racial than me. It's like, well, I can like burst him down, but he's going to be able to survive for 2 turns, and he's going to kill me in those 2 turns. So, gosh darn it. Or what they should do, instead of nerfing the undead racial, is just to buff all the other racials to match it. Like, they could probably leave the mechanical racial alone, but just give all the other racials something a little bit better. That way they're not completely worthless in comparison to the undead racial. I guess nerfing the racial is a lot easier, though. Or they could have just done nothing like I expected them to. I didn't think Blizzard would give 2 shits about balancing PvP pet battles, since it's such a very small portion of the population actually plays it. Okay, so these are all some really good things. The sleeping gas thing is probably the only one I thought would be a little bit unnecessary, so this is not really a big problem, but it is annoying when you go against it. And I do use a frog on one of my best anti-meta teams. You know, just a team you'd use if you're queuing against the same guy who's running the stupid MPD Graves combo over and over. It's like, yeah, I'm going to switch to my anti-meta team, which has a frog on it. I don't really use Frog Kiss, though, for that. It's mainly just because Frog Kiss is a really good counter to Sunlight teams. And that actually segues into my next point. They didn't do anything about Sunlight teams. Sunlight teams were the only thing they ignored in here. Like, they hit AoE teams, and they nerfed Graves. Graves is still going to be a good pet. He'll still be tier 1. Actually, will he still be tier 1 now that I think about it? I just kind of said that, but I don't know if he will. The tier 1, the thing I put on my list anyway, it doesn't really matter to you guys. But yeah, Sunlight teams, still very strong, still very annoying. They didn't do anything about that. What they need to do is hit photosynthesis, the 5-round hot that allows the blossoming ancient and the sinking sunflower to survive for days, or just to like lower their health by a lot because they both have a lot of health. Just do something about that. Even then, they'd still probably, I don't know, they need to nerf sunlight in some way, or photosynthesis, because sunlight teams are still the only thing that they basically missed. I can't think of anything else. The biggest cancers in the game were Graves and Sunlight teams. They fixed Graves with these changes that aren't going to come out to the Legion, and these are just the alpha build, so they could change at any time. But if they fix Sunlight teams as well, then it's going to be an interesting metagame. It's like, oh wow, there's so many things we can do now because it's not going to be dominated by NPD Graves teams anymore. Or you're not just going to quit out. There are some people who like to fight against Sunlight teams. I think I was able to beat one once because he didn't play it defensively enough. Because to win with the Sunlight team, all you basically do is just heal up and attack your opponent by a tiny bit every turn, and you just make the match last for like an hour, which is just no fun. And you can't kill them unless you have ridiculous burst damage or some kind of type advantage against them. They also, I forgot, there's one more thing they didn't do. Merkalot. Nothing about Merkalot. I guess nerfing Graves is a step in the right direction for stopping Merkalite combos, but Merkalot, he's the only pet in the game that can use this Righteous Inspiration ability, which allows him to get a free switch, and the next pet that comes out will have 100% increased damage and speed for a turn, which if you use on an AoE is going to be a shit ton of AoE damage to everyone. The best team in the game uses Merkalot and Graves. They nerfed one of them, but Merkalot is still, alive and ready to go to use his Righteous Inspiration to kill everyone else. What they need to do is nerf that ability, Righteous Inspiration, or just take it away. He's literally the only pet in the game who can use it, and he's a super rare pet, so it's not that big of a problem because you don't see too many of those people who have that pet because it's ridiculously rare. But if you do go against it, there's not much you can do to stop them. Unless you get really lucky. No, unless you get really lucky with the team you have. That just happens to be really good against... Even an anti-AoE team is really hard to beat against a Merkalot Graves combo. It's just too much damage. Too much AoE damage, I should say. Even if you build a team specifically to counter it, they still have a really good chance of beating you just because it's too good. So yeah. Oh, I guess that's it for that. I guess at the end of this I should talk about... Let's see... There probably won't be a pet battle video for like the next day or two because I'm going to be watching my nephew for a little bit. And I can't sit down and record a video uninterrupted while I'm babysitting, so until that's sorted out, this will probably be my only video for like the next couple days, or longer if it decides if there's something else that comes up. So yeah,